Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you for having me. As Janet mentioned, I'm an adjunct assistant professor at GW. I'm also an instructor at Harvard University Extension School. I actually teach a class on loneliness. I'm also a PhD student, so you're getting kind of a sense of how crazy I am about school. And this is actually the topic of my dissertation. So it is near and dear to my heart. And today we're going to talk about how social connection is really a form of medicine and how it affects our health. So, why is loneliness important to our health? Well, first and foremost, we are social creatures. We are literally wired for connection. So, you can think of social connection as a basic drive, right? Like hunger or thirst. When we don't eat enough food, we get hungry. When we aren't hydrated enough, we get thirsty. When we don't have enough social connection, we get lonely. So, in other words, we thrive together, but we suffer when we're alone. And this has been depicted in many different types of movies and literature throughout the ages. And at the risk of pointing out the obvious, COVID-19 really brought to the forefront how much loneliness can impact all of our health. But it's been around long before COVID. So, what is loneliness exactly? Well, it's basically the feeling of being socially disconnected or lacking meaningful interpersonal relationships. And I put an emphasis on meaningful because, as you know, you can have a lot of relationships, but if they aren't personally meaning and fulfilling, they might feel a little bit shallow and you can become lonely. And this is associated with either a lack of quantity of relationships or quality of relationships, or both. Social isolation is a little bit different, but can lead to loneliness. Social isolation, that's being physically alone or having very infrequent contact with other human beings. Now, loneliness does not necessarily equal social isolation, but they are related. But I think it's really important to point out that one may have very frequent interactions with lots of people, be surrounded by an entire crowd, and still feel lonely. Whereas others may be physically completely alone and not feel lonely at all. So this is subjective. It's personal to us and how we experience it. Right now, we in America are in the midst of a loneliness epidemic. The Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, recently called this to the forefront of public policy because we now know that the health threat of loneliness is as damaging as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Let that sit for just a second. Even if you don't smoke, the damaging effects of loneliness are akin to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. This is on par with smoking and obesity that our country is dealing with right now. So, like I mentioned, loneliness is like hunger. It is when we're lacking for something, our body gives us a signal for survival. Well, this isn't just an American problem in the United States, right? This is actually a global health problem in hundreds of countries. So, who's affected by loneliness? Well, perhaps a better question is who isn't? Loneliness spans all variables. All ages can be affected by loneliness, sexes and genders, races and ethnicities, socioeconomic status, and even different personality types. So just some quick stats. Over 2/3 of the world's population will report being lonely at some stage in their life. And critically, loneliness has been linked to a 26 to 32% increase in premature mortality. Okay, so risk of dying prematurely. Older adults are especially vulnerable to the damaging effects of loneliness. In a recent survey, we found that 1 out of every 4 older people in the world feels lonely. It's actually more than a quarter of the population. So it's 27.6%. The highest prevalence was in North America, in older women, and probably to no surprise to you, those who live in institutions, like long-term care centers, for example. And I'd like to point out that loneliness is experienced differently at different life stages. Now, what does that mean? Well, as you know, we ebb and flow through different stages in our life, like retirement, empty nest, loss of a spouse or a family member, moving. Moving is another one of those top stressors in your life, right? But it also kind of upends your social network sometimes. And then going through health changes throughout your life and especially becoming a caregiver. There's also stigma around loneliness. And this is heartbreaking even more because when you think about it, so you go to the doctor, it's my dog getting out of my chair. When you go to the doctor, it can be embarrassing to admit that you're lonely or that you don't have a family member with you. And this is kind of a double-edged sword because we're talking about all these health impacts of loneliness. But then it's also associated with the shame and embarrassment that delays help-seeking behavior. So you get caught in this vicious cycle. Well, what about health and well-being? This is a really nice picture from the Office of the Surgeon General that kind of shows just how integral social connection is to our health and well-being. Social connection affects our psychological state, whether or not we feel we have meaning and purpose, our stress levels, our levels of hope, and what we feel psychologically transmits to our physical body. So, depending on how we feel psychologically, that can increase our stress hormones, it can increase the inflammation in our body, even expression of our genes down to our DNA. That can also lead to different types of behaviors, right? So, if any of you have ever felt lonely or depressed or sad, maybe you lack a little bit of your typical motivation to get out there and exercise or to eat healthy. I know when I'm stressed and having a bad day, I want some chocolate, right? So it does affect our behaviors as well. And then that all translates to in our overall picture of our health. Okay, so our risks for things like heart disease and stroke and diabetes. And I struggled with this slide because there are too many conditions related to loneliness for the purposes of this talk, but I did want to throw out some highlights. In the literature and in clinical research, we have found that loneliness has been linked to higher blood pressure, diabetes, poor sleep, substance use like alcohol and drugs, a weakened immune system, so you can get sick more easily, depression and anxiety. It's also associated with higher risks of heart disease, stroke, and even cancer. And we also are in the midst of a major public health crisis with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And loneliness is intimately related with higher risks of dementia and accelerated cognitive decline in those who are already experiencing cognitive decline. The Lancet Commission, just a couple years ago now, came out with 14 modifiable risk factors for dementia that you've probably heard about. A lot of lifestyle risk factors like smoking and diabetes, obesity, etc. But look what I put in red here. Social isolation, which includes the loneliness, and depression. So these are two modifiable risk factors associated with loneliness that are major risk factors for dementia. So what can you do about it? It's not as easy as just taking a pill, right? And I laugh when people ask me, you can't just say, go get a dog, right? This was something that happened during COVID. Remember, everyone started getting pets because they were isolated and lonely. It's not quite as simple as that. But as I hope you're seeing, social connection is such an important part of health, and feeling connected to others can support your feelings of emotional health and well-being, can support your heart and brain health, can help with your stress levels and your overall quality of life. And it's really important to understand that even small steps towards connection can make a huge difference over time. So I can't I can't stress enough the idea of and the power of baby steps. Um, I thought this was interesting. The American Psychiatric Association asked Americans, "What do you do when you feel lonely?" And the kind of coping mechanisms that came up were things you'd probably think about, like finding a distraction, watching TV, listening to a podcast. A lot of people go for walks, reach out to friends and family, connect to a pet, which happens to be my personal favorite. I have two fur babies that are my whole life. Exercise, volunteering, going to therapy, volunteering. And so these are all pretty positive things, right? But again, as we mentioned with our behavioral compensation, sometimes they're maladaptive, like eating more than usual, eating more sugar than usual, using drugs or alcohol. So, again, the power of baby steps. Sometimes people try to fix things all at once, and that can be overwhelming. So, a lot of people feel it is really helpful to just start by calling one person, reconnecting with a friend, joining one activity. Hobbies, I think, are um, some of the most salient and powerful ways to connect with other people. And they have multiple benefits. One, you're probably engaging in a hobby that you enjoy doing. And two, you get to have that social aspect, connecting with other people. Sit with others during routine moments, like when you're having a meal or spending time outdoors. Volunteering at least once a month. Um, Volunteering and other forms of activities like that also help us give back and feel the sense of meaning and purpose, which is another added benefit. Take a walk with somebody. And at the end of the day, you have to decide what feels manageable and comfortable for you. There's no one size fits all. It's just like anything in health, it's personalized and individualized. So choose what's manageable for you. I would be remiss if I didn't give a little bit of a plug in for lifestyle medicine and integrative medicine, because we do consider social connection as one of the main pillars of health, in addition to stress management that I circled over here, because loneliness, anxiety, stress, depression, all are stressful subjective experiences that damage our health. And in lifestyle medicine and integrative medicine, we talk about making goals, making smart goals. So smart goals are meant to set you up for success, right? Like I said, baby steps. If you aim too big, too fast, it could be a failure waiting to happen, a failure, right? So starting small and realistic and making goals that are attainable can be really helpful. And it doesn't have to be just with social connection. It can be with any goal you're looking to attain. But an example for social connection would be, I will increase my feeling of social connectedness by joining a group fitness class that meets for 1 hour, 3 nights a week. It's small, specific, measurable, and attainable, and time connected. Okay. I know that this center really does a great job teaching about loneliness. So I did want to mention that loneliness is one of the clinical interventions for loneliness as well. So mindfulness in this context would be learning to sit with loneliness without judging it, which can actually help to reduce its intensity. Finally, as I hope we've covered today, social connection is an integral part of health, and support can look different for everyone. And connection doesn't have to be big, it just has to be consistent. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Janet, how did I do on time?
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm gonna make it so folks can ask you questions. All right, if you'd like to ask a question, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you for the heart. I love it.
Or you can ask in the chat. Let's I see there's something going on there, so let's see. Okay, we have a question from Jennifer. Any thoughts about a correlation between the loneliness surge and low birth rates? Being with small children can make their caretakers feel extremely lonely, but kids of all ages also can provide companionship. Jen, if I didn't put that correctly, just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question.
No, you got it.
Okay.
What an interesting question. There was an article that just came out about low birth rates in the New York Times, I think. In my humble opinion, I think that a lot of the crises we've been through in the past few decades, including COVID, including the surge of social media, has had an impact on our ability to relate to other people. You see that especially in adolescents and young adults. So I would not be surprised if it did have some kind of correlation with loneliness. And interesting that you bring up young children, because they can provide a relationship. And one thing we talk about in the loneliness space is intergenerational care. For example, teaching and giving younger kids or adolescents the opportunity to interact with those of older generations for this intergenerational reciprocal relationship. And when we've done studies allowing them to have this opportunity, both parties tend to feel it is meaningful, purposeful, and beneficial, right? So both the adolescents and young adults and the people in older generations. So I think not only having kids, as a familial part, but I think even just allowing this intergenerational contact is really important.
Yeah, I'm a not very subtle advocate for all this, being a grandmother who takes care of grandchildren
Oh,
and has wonderful relationships. And I've always thought that, you should locate your daycare centers right next to your adult care centers and let people have recess.
yes. Yes, and it's funny because, not funny, slight personal story. When my father was in a long-term memory care center, I arrived one day to visit him and he was holding a baby doll, right? And the rationale is it gives persons with dementia a purpose, right, to take care of a little kid and to reminisce on when they had children. But my response to the cameraman is, well, why don't you just bring real kids here? Wouldn't that be better? So I'm with you on that. I see a hand, Randall.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for your talk. I just had a question about something, what we were talking about, the different things that have been found to correlate with loneliness. And I was just wondering uh, do we really know for some or even all of these that it's a causal correlation? Like, for example, some of these things, like say even like dementia you were talking about, isn't it possible that somebody as they're, going into dementia, they're going to find it harder to connect with people, or or even
100%.
something that people with like heart disease or health issues or other things where that it's like the other way around, where they might have it might keep them from connecting with people because
Mhm.
of their life circumstances.
Absolutely. Randall, you are highly intuitive in this regard. Number one, I'm always hesitant to use the word causal because one, I think most things in life are multifactorial. You're not usually a one-to-one causal correlation, or I'm sorry, causation. It's more of a correlation. And you are so right because it's bidirectional. Especially when you start to experience cognitive decline or other health issues, you can feel hesitant or even embarrassed to talk to others because you think that they might judge you, or you think that they will think less of you. This is a major issue in all types of chronic diseases with this idea of stigma. And the best thing we can do is keep talking about it and lessen the stigma, because the more we normalize it, the more comfortable people who are dealing with this will be.
I just want to mention one thing about that. I don't know if you think this would be a good idea or not, but a friend of mine told me about their mother-in-law had dementia and went into a memory care home. And so she showed me this brochure that the center, this home, gave out to family members. And what it was it's like an option to sign up for a program where they have something essentially like what I have is Alexa Plus. It's like a device that could talk to the people in the nursing home, and I think it was a paid service. And I suspect some of that was because they're so understaffed. This is just a way of to have somebody, quote unquote, to talk to. I don't know if you think that's a good idea or a bad idea. I don't know. I guess it was just, and I saw it. Also, I'm not sure why they're have this paid thing, but I thought of it. It seems to make some sense because unless you have family members who visit you in a nursing home, you can go a long time without seeing a person.
You certainly can. Gosh, you certainly can. And so I think with AI and chatbots, there's a slippery slope.
Yes, it's AI. Right.
Yes, AI and chatbots. I think that we need to be very responsible and informed and make sure that these bots are ethically trained, because the last thing we would want is to create more anxiety, more tension, more confusion. At the same time, we do need to do a better job about decreasing the experiences of loneliness. And frankly, everyone, but those who are already in care centers are far more at risk and kind of in a stuck situation. So I think at the end of the day, it's a good idea if it's responsibly trained and implemented, if that makes sense.
It does. It seems sort of sad that, we couldn't figure out a way to get more human contact with people in that situation. This seems like just a, way to substitute for that, but
And
it's probably better than nothing. So
perhaps better than nothing, but there will never be a substitute for real human contact. There just won't be. And we know that. And I think we're starting to implement more programs to help this. And part of it is awareness. Part of it is talking to as many people as you can to say loneliness is a real thing. It's a real problem, and it damages people's health, and it is damaging their quality of life. So this needs to be a focus of clinical care. That's part of what I'm doing in my research, is to tell doctors, to instruct them and to teach them that this is something you need to look out for all the time. Because it's not just the diabetes, it's not just the high blood pressure, it's not just cognitive decline. Loneliness can be driving so many of these things or making them worse. So we have to pay better attention and, reach out, If you're in a store, make eye contact and say hi to somebody. Sometimes it's just those little things.
Just
Anyway.
one more follow-up on that is that I think from what I've heard is, and I was in a philosophy group, they were having the discussion about human chatbot connections, but I believe it might fall under your list of, things people are doing, like watching TV to substitute for loneliness. But I believe that probably there are a lot of people who are using them as a substitute for social connection, especially maybe more young people, but I don't know, maybe older people too. I don't know.
Yep, especially young people, but really it's everyone. And I think that the question is why? Why do people feel this need? Right? And the answer is they feel lonely. And we need to do better at the human connection side.